Diagwib folks, Accordia, Kunisatatu. This is Siobhán, the Celtic Empath. Welcome back to my next updated weekly vlog, which at this stage could be bi-weekly. We had Paddy's weekend here, so we had a double bank holiday weekend. Not too sure really what that actually meant. It just meant that the kids were off school for a much longer time than they normally would be for Paddy's weekend. So we had like a really long weekend. So today's Tuesday, they're back in school. And I'm getting back into my vlogging routine. So welcome, thank you for joining me, thank you for watching my video. If you have found me, if you're a new subscriber, welcome, thank you for subscribing and for coming along with me on this journey, my own journey. And also to my older loyal subscribers, I guess, thank you for finding me and for subscribing and watching. So who am I? I'm Siobhán and I am A.U.R.A Hypnosis practitioner, R.A.A.H Reiki certified as well, also an oracle card reader. I'm also practicing integrating Shamanka as well, and rediscovering my own Celtic roots and origins as what a Celtic Shamanka actually means, and reawakening that part of that work inside of me. And this brings together a lot of things for me, intuitions, feelings, insights that I've had over the years and since being a child. And that's what brings me to addressing this subject a little bit today. And just briefly, I won't hold you for too long, but I want to bring in the idea of, as the title of the video says today, the notion of connecting with our animal spirits and what that actually means for us. So animal spirits, many different names, and we have power animals. So I'm not talking about connecting with power animals here. This is more the spirit of an animal. So what arises a lot within journeys when I'm working with people, whether it's with even in the practice of hypnosis or with R.A.A Reiki or in oracle readings, the energy of an animal may want to connect with an individual person. The client resonates with the animal because the mere mention of saying such and such an animal spirit is actually with you. In some instances, people will say, oh, well, you know, I actually came across that particular animal a few days ago, or this particular animal, bird, whatever it actually is, a winged creature or a four-legged creature, has moved into my shed outside, or this particular creature I've noticed has been visiting my back garden. Or maybe a view from your house, you might actually have the view of a particular bird or an animal's warren, their nest perhaps, and you're able to see this animal walking through the field perhaps from your home. Or maybe you go walking somewhere and then you have this random crossing where an animal crosses your path, which is unusual, that wouldn't normally always happen. And so maybe if you're walking in the forest, for example here in Ireland, you might a fox might cross your path, which would be unusual for a fox to cross the path out in the countryside. It wouldn't happen every day when I'm out walking. So I pay attention to those signs, and what I bring forward in what I'm speaking to today, that it's important, like when we're on this like spiritual journey or this awakening process, is paying attention to the visitation of this particular animal that crosses our path. For an example, a common thing that happens, you're driving down the road in your car, and once again an unusual crossing of an animal that you wouldn't normally see crosses the path of the road, or let's say in front of you, or you see an unusual bird flying in the sky when you're out on your journey. And again, it's an unusual occurrence, it's not something you see every day. So to bring attention and awareness to this animal that is presenting itself within our pathway. It's crossing your path for a reason. Its energy is coming to your experience for a reason. There is a message in that, and this is the part of where, when we are on this awakening journey, that we are often inquiring within ourselves for insights, for new insights, for always looking maybe for new information, or we're looking for guidance or help or signs, depending on which part of the journey that we're actually on. So what happens is that sometimes we get the signs, the information, via an animal spirit showing up in our life. So what animal has crossed your path, even if it's a cat? And you might say, well, cats are pretty common and they're domestic, but it's not like as if a cat is always running, depending on where you live. Some places, okay, they may have high populations of cats, but generally speaking, if a cat crosses you, happens to run across, even the cat is bringing information. Traditionally, if the cat runs from the right to the left, it can be bringing you message, and a different message if the cat crosses your path from the left to the right. And so these are all like folkloric, mythological, maybe old-fashioned sort of sentiments or ideas or tales that may have been passed down through history within our ancestors, within our grandparents, and seem to have really lost that connection to these messages and this understanding and awareness of animals showing up in our lives every day. So it's interesting to me that I want to draw attention to the fact that in this modern culture, we have been told a lot of different things, lies, mistruths, conceptions. History has been changed. What we've been told is the truth very often isn't the truth, and we've been disconnected from very natural, instinctual vibes and connections that were natural to us as humans, this natural connection that we had to nature, that we weren't so separated from it. But what has happened in society is that we have become quite separated, so that now we're separated from the magic, we're separated from the animal messages, the spirit messages that turn up as perhaps as warnings, but not even as warnings, more so as messages of all different types of hope, of future outcomes, of abundance, of wealth, of changes and metamorphosis and transformation that's happening in our lives, and perhaps how we can actually help harness the energy of changes that may be occurring or that are going to be coming into our lives. Personally, myself, I have experienced, and we're just not going to stick just with birds here, but birds are the easier, clearer example of messages to inform you that there is a message. And this is kind of like an easier kind of message or an image that we can still accept, that birds are messengers, right? So we don't struggle too much with that. We still have held on to that kind of magic or that wisdom of birds being messengers. And I have noticed, yes, different varieties of birds bring me different messages. So that would be one easy or clear example of a spirit animal showing up in our lives. So the idea is that, like, on a regular basis, that animals are communicating with us, the spirit of an animal, the message, the vibration of what an animal has to bring forward to us. And like, we know that in terms of, I'm going to say the word Freemasonry, and in terms of magic, in terms of mythology and folklore, which, you know, you have to question, you know, why is stuff that's old and ancient relegated back into being myth or folklore? What does that actually mean? But so to bring forward that kind of wisdom, or to reconnect with that wisdom, for example, in the financial markets, when we look at the financial markets, they use the bull, which is the representation, the bull market. The Pope, in the Vatican, he uses the bull and papal. So they bring this animal power and wisdom and spirit of the animal into their practices. And when I say they, I mean like the authorities, the people who are in authoritarian positions, who are running society, and I mean running the financial market, the worldwide financial market. You know, it's not that I'm an expert or by any means in relation to finance and stuff, but like, you know, it's called the bull market for a reason, and there's a lot of reasons if you go into the history of connections into Freemasonry and other things to do with the word Hasidic comes into my mind, not Hasidic, Khazarian is more so the word, and how the markets evolved, and you know, this fiat currency, so on and so forth, and all of that, and that's a whole other can of worms I'm not going to go into today. But so we have a history, and that when we look around us, animals are used quite a lot by authorities because the animal messages are powerful, the spirit of the animal. There once was a point in history where we were, as humans, intertwined with animals, and a lot of myth, particularly in Celtic and Norse myth, we have famous mythology that's connected into the Selkie. And so this is a form of shape-shifting. In native Indian culture, they have something called the Skinwalkers, and I think the Nagawans, something like that. And it's again about people being able to work with animal skins, with the pelts, and transform, shapeshift into animals by wearing the pelt, the skinwalker. That's also connected into shamanism. It's a form of shamanism or shapeshifting, whatever you want to call it. It's all connected. It's all magic. It's all part of the magic, the history, the lore, myth, the whole lot. And this is the beginning core of my own philosophy, my own teachings, where I'm going down the road with this eventually, is the connections, of reconnecting all of this kind of lost sort of wisdom that's not really lost, because it's all still connected and deep inside of us. It's just for us to reconnect to this power. And so one important way of doing that is by recognizing the spirit animal when it turns up in our lives. So whatever way that happens for you, it is important. It will be important for you to recognize it and bring the awareness of that animal energy into your life. You'll be able to recognize changes that are happening in your life through the energy of this animal. And you can actually call or ask or connect to this animal energy for the guidance and support maybe that you need to go through transformation and changes within your life. For example, the deer. I was out walking a couple of years ago, and I happened to spot some deers which wouldn't normally have been at this particular lake, drinking from the lake at this time in the evening when I was out walking. It was a once-off occurrence. I've never seen them there since then. But I was experiencing some issues and problems that I was trying to figure out. And I spotted these deers, and I was like, oh gosh, that's really nice. It was lovely energy to observe and witness them. And I thought, God, how lucky I was to be able to actually see that, because it's unusual. And then I felt this difference, lightness in my energy field from connecting in with them. And I started to feel the power message coming through from the spirit of the deer. You know, they're always alert. They're graceful and dignified. They were drinking from this lake. They're in the present moment. But when they became alert and realized that there was a human around, then they very swiftly, very adeptly take off. And they took off really quickly. And I thought, the agility of the deer to respond in that environment, in the situation, to be able to move so swiftly and so elegantly. And I pulled that energy from that experience and applied that to the problems and situations that I was experiencing in my life then. Be like the deer. Be like the deer. Be alert. You don't have to be on tender hooks. And as humans, we get triggered and we walk on eggshells. We experience anxiety. But the deer, it's effortless. And there was this boundlessness, lightness of foot, and keep on moving. There's movement as well. So I thought, okay, I'm going to bound my way through my problems. And that's what I did. So that is just one example of harnessing the energy and the power of the animal that is trying to guide you and show you, you know, your own connection, your own power and wisdom. So I came across this interesting word, and it's called Theoryanthropy. So I have it written down here. It is the mythological ability of human beings to metamorphise into other animals, shape-shifting. That's how I would associate with that, but there's an actual word. And of course there's the whole like psychological psychosis and other like things that they attribute to it, but there are people who identify with Theoryanthropy. So I just kind of, it was interesting that there's an actual word to a modern terminology that like says that, oh yeah, there is actually a thing of connections of people who connect and identify with animals or shape-shifting into animals and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's just the modern word. I don't identify or associate with that particular modern word. But it was kind of interesting because it brought a lot of things together in relation to the knowledge. For example, there's other things, you know, part of that disconnection, I was, you know, we have the Selkie in like the Celtic and Norse lore, but then what kind of overwrote everything out of the 80s, I think it was like the 70s and 80s, was werewolf movies. And like these became these massive scaremongering movies. And there was one really famous one done in the, I think, in the moors in the UK, and like forevermore that's gone down in werewolf movie history. And like that's an awful implantation within us of fear, a triggering of fear, and giving us this negative association again with animals, the power of animals, and disconnecting us from the animal world, animal kingdom. So there's this rewiring or reassociation that needs to go on with us, because that is part of the issue. Those type of programming, those type of images, those type of stories that also disconnect us from the power that is within ourselves. So it's just another element, another aspect to look at. It's something that I was kind of looking at and thinking, there is, with that werewolf movie, a lot of like Masonic connections into the movie, and I don't want to get blocked or whatever. But to wrap it up, one of the biggest animal metamorphosis experiences that I had was a good few years ago, and it was connected into White Buffalo Woman, and the story that was told by a lady who's called A.U.R.A, and I read her book years ago, and I have worked with the initiations within that book with the stories, and there was these deep connections bringing back the White Buffalo Woman and the white buffalo, the calf as well. And I think that there actually was, after that book was written or published, around that time, the first white buffalo, I think, calf was born that had, because they were gone from the American landscape or interior, and then a new one re-emerged a few years ago, and I believe it's still alive. I hope it is. But it was in or around the time that the Sophia Code book, I think, was also written and published. And White Buffalo Woman energy in the story, if I remember it correctly, she changes into the white buffalo, or into the buffalo, and I think changes through many colours actually into that stage of metamorphosis. But there's many different stories where we use the animal's power, like in Ireland, rabbit's paws. We have, you know, people used to carry around a rabbit's foot for luck as a lucky charm. So yeah, it's made, modern culture has made all these things kind of unsavory in some sort of a way, almost like as if it's medieval or archaic. That's the disconnect. That is the disconnect. What I think is happening is that we are re-emerging from the old, reconnecting to the old, but we're re-emerging in a whole new way, a whole new understanding. We're recreating. So that's all I want to say. What animal has been crossing your path recently that is trying to get your attention? You know, associate it, what's going on in your life, have a look, pay attention to the energy, the power of this animal. What I would say is try and tune into what are the skills, the attributes, the personality of this particular creature. What do you associate with it? And your intuition, your magic will help you to discern that, the power, the message of what you can actually bring into your life, what it is that you need. So that is it. Thank you for listening. And I am working on my video. It's to do with kind of ancient Irish mythology. It's a kind of a bit of a presentation thing, and so that hopefully will actually be coming next week. So thank you for listening, thank you for subscribing,